I'm Laura Brown from Harpers Bazaar, and this is Trudie Styler and
Hello,
Celine
everyone.
Rattray.
Hi.
Well, firstly, they're quite the team, but I'm sure you know Trudie. Not only is we're going to talk about film production, but she's an actress, a producer, an activist, a philanthropist, a fabulous
Anything
blonde,
ending in ist.
a fabulous blonde, and just generally saucy and lovely, awesome woman. Celine Rattray is a film producer who has achieved more films than should be possible at her age, because she's 24. No, and as before, and together, how many years ago now at Maven?
3.5 years.
Yeah.
3.5 years ago, they formed Maven Pictures together, and I have a story with this because this is cheeky. Randomly, Celine was looking to start something, and had always really respected Trudie, and asked me if I had a contact for her, and I happened to have Trudie's email, and I'm never this guy, but I just sent her Trudie's email,
And told me, do not say you got it from me.
Anyway, 3.5 years later, it seemed to have worked out okay. So these guys, 3.5 years, starting a film company, and in my friendship with Celine, we've been at screenings or parties or dinner, and she's had been on the phone with LA and raising money and enrolling all these calls, and it's just always struck me as such an intense business, and how dedicated you have to be, and when you go to a festival and somebody's bidding on your film and you don't know who, when, or what, and it's so nuts, and Celine always struck me as so calm through all of this, and Trudie is so tenacious and really gets it done and gets it made and enlists people to the cause, be it a film, be it the rainforest benefit, be it anything in the middle. So they're kind of a meeting of the minds. They have a common ground, similar tastes, obviously. So I think that firstly, I want to hear about your very first meeting when you first wrote, "Dear Trudie, hello."
There was actually a meeting before that email. We were both at a party at a filmmaker's house, and we were playing a game that some of you may know called Mafia, where you have to pretend you're the mob, and the mob has to kill the townspeople before the townspeople catch the mob. Anyway, it was this role-play game, and Trudie kept winning. And all night,
Shocker.
She was basically winning and beating everyone else. And I was so admiring her smarts and her acting, and
I was murdering people, actually.
but doing it very, very well.
Not even metaphorically.
And we met for a few minutes that night, and I was just generally had a girl crush on her, and was so taken with her, and asked Laura for her email, and asked her to have lunch. And I was looking for a business partner at that time, and we had our first lunch where Trudie spent the first 45 minutes saying how much she was frustrated with producing and kind of had enough of producing and didn't really want to produce anymore. So I really got to the point where I said, should I even tell her that this was the reason for the lunch?
Should I go now?
And right at the end, I said, based on what you're saying, maybe you wouldn't be interested in this, but I asked you to have lunch, so I'm just going to tell you that I would really love to start a company with you. And Trudie's eyes lit up, and she seemed interested again.
Absolutely.
What did you think of this upstart?
Well, I don't have a lot of memory of Mafia because I was too busy murdering people. But I was looking forward to meeting with Celine because I loved her movie, The Kids Are All Right, and she's so prolific. Celine's made double the amount of films than I have. So I was intrigued to meet her. And I thought that she perhaps wanted to enlist me as a co-producer or a producer on a movie she was working on. And when I came to New York and knew that my nest was going to be emptying, I decided that I wanted to go back to my first love as being an actor. And Celine made everything in the meeting so it's all doable, Trudie. You can have everything. And I really am a girl that loves my cake and eat it. And so it was an offer that was too good to refuse. And I must say, since we began at Maven Pictures, we have such an easy and fantastic great friendship together, that even when the going gets very rough, and it can do with movies of the size that we make, because we are in the indie trenches, that every day we find something to laugh at or somebody to poke fun at, and to make everything feel like it's going to be fine. And indeed, when you make a movie, no matter what it's like, in the end, it's your piece of work, it's your imprimatur, and it really is okay. And you've learned a lot, even if it is the best film in the world that you've ever made. You have a great learning curve, and I've loved in this last 3.5 years going on this journey with Celine to really make ourselves better filmmakers, learn our lessons. We learn lessons in the movies that don't work so well, and have a great time with the movies that do work well.
I think people would wonder, how do your roles split within both being co-founders of this company, day to day? I mean, you're on the financing sort of side, or how does it work? How do you make the movies between the two of you?
My background is business, and
Yeah.
I'm really drawn to the financial business, kind of business affairs, the deal-making aspects of making films. And in working with Trudie, I'm so impressed on a daily basis by her creative talent, her ability to really identify in a piece of work, in a script, that this is going to be a great film, her ability to see in a young filmmaker that this is someone with great talent, everything on the casting front. She's really just such a creative force, and I would say, that's probably the aspect that I'm weaker in. So I think we complement each other very, very well,
right,
in terms of having both different interests and different skills. And it's interesting, actually, both of us, we read material and look at projects from a very different standpoint. So we have a meeting every Monday where we spend 2 hours going through our existing slate, but also submissions, and I will analyze every submission that we have from a business standpoint and say, this makes business sense or this doesn't make business sense, in my opinion. And Trudie will really be driven by the creative, and it's actually a really great dialogue because she will point out things that I wouldn't have thought of. And it's
And do you, in terms of, do you have similar taste in, say, a script, for example? Because even if you're handling different sides, like, sort of emotionally, will you read a script, or will you be in a situation where you read one and Trudie goes, oh, no, or vice versa? What do you think?
The thing about being in art is that there are no rules, really. You either connect to something in a visceral way, in a profound way, or it's sort of like it can be a bread and butter job. And we have mouths to feed, we have rents to pay, we have a business, in short. So we need to be quite sensible sometimes with the choices that we make. But that said, that when a screenplay speaks to you, and it can be really so diverse from the movies that we've made, from we set out our store really to be to empower actresses and female filmmakers, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that. Our first movie was Girl Most Likely, with Shari Berman directing, and it was a vehicle for Kristen Wiig. And then we did Black Nativity, which was a vehicle for the great Casey Lemons, and Jennifer Hudson and Forrest Whitaker were in that. So, and then, lo and behold, a movie called Filth comes along, which is an Irving Welsh sort of psychological story of a cop who's losing his mind, brilliantly played by James McAvoy. And I like bad boy movies. My first movies sortie into production in feature films with Guy Ritchie, where I enjoy that sort of male energy of sort of like looking at hierarchies of the shadow of people. And so Filth really appealed to me on that level, and it's done extremely well and garnered huge accolades for James McAvoy. I think that people will say that movie was a game changer. They've never seen him play such a dark character, and we enjoyed that process as well.
So when say the script for Filth, sorry, I'm on Sudafed, I'm sorry. Anyway, Filth arrives in the Maven universe. What's the first reaction to it, and then what's the process of then getting that made?
I think on that one, Trudie probably was pushing for it more than I was, because I think Trudie has built a lot of young filmmakers' careers, and saw in it was a young Scottish second-time filmmaker, and saw someone who was very, very talented and that she could really kind of help and support. So I think on that one, Trudie probably pushed more than I did. On everything that we've done, we've both ultimately wanted to do it, but there's usually one person or the other who really is passionate. And as Trudie said, it's often a very personal thing. It's themes that really speak to you, or there's a reason you connect with something.
You really want, if it's a book you want to option or something, like how do you strategize how you're going to get it?
Absolutely.
And how do you do it? Is there an anecdote? Is there something like that you've pursued, that you've got, or that you're planning on that?
It's always a very competitive process to get the material, and then it's a very difficult process to get movies into production. And one story in particular was on Black Nativity, which was a movie that we'd set up at Fox Searchlight, and it was in development forever, and they were very on the fence about whether to make it or not. Trudie was determined to get that movie into production, and ended up basically stalking both, I say stalking, but in a nice way.
In an adorable way.
In an adorable way.
In an adorable, genteel British way.
Forrest Whitaker, who she'd met a few times, and Jennifer Hudson, who she'd met a few times, and basically forced them both to do the movie, and the movie went into production. And
murder. I remember the murder.
Well, I think that sometimes, the big movie stars, they have so much on their plates, and they're offered so many things. And sometimes, the studio money and pictures are, awfully tempting. And when we read, and Celine bought Black Nativity with her from her previous location, which was Mandalay Vision, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful story that was hopeful and one of those sort of like holiday pictures that you should be watching, as opposed to something that was a little bit more kind of frothy.
Or filthy.
Or filthy. Not going to let me get away with that one, are you?
Nope.
And so I wrote to Forrest and said, look, I know you have a lot of things going on, but please take a look at this. I don't think you'll regret the read, even if you find that you can't do it. Anyway, long story short, he not only did it, he came and he lived with me for a month while he was doing it. So having Forrest Whitaker being my roommate was pretty nice. And Jennifer is enchanting. She's so talented, as you know. She was at one of our guests of our Rainforest Carnegie Hall. Big-hearted woman, so wanting to make contributions like this, and she didn't need a lot of persuading, and came on board.
And then you both travel quite a bit. Celine's not going anywhere right at this minute. But how do you keep your communication sort of fluid, when you're in different sides of the world? And do you have you have your Monday thing? Do you do it on the phone if you're not in the same room?
So we have this Monday meeting that we try and do in person as much as possible, and that's very thorough, for just going through every submission, every project. And the purpose of the meeting is to say, what new projects do we want? And then for our existing projects, how do you move them forward?
Right.
And when you have issues, we brainstorm on how do you solve those issues. And then the rest of the time, it's phone calls, emails, or in-person meetings, and just kind of grabbing each other whenever we can. Trudie travels more than I do, but is so responsive, and just sends emails back from India, from the UK, or from Holland, or from wherever she is.
Especially in Holland.
Especially
No, just Holland. Like Holland was such a weird example, but it was like, yes, she gets around. She's a very international lady.
I just got off the plane from Holland.
From Holland. Oh, just fantastic. Now, what happens if you disagree, either creatively or in a business?
Well, one of the things about producing films is you're fighting against the world all the time on a daily basis. You're fighting to get your movies to happen. When you're making the movies, there's 100 people working on it who all want different things, and there's so much fighting that goes on that I actually find that most of the time the two of us are united, trying to get through these battles. And I think one of the things that is so important about a business partner is someone who's there when things are great, but also someone who is there by your side to solve problems when things are tough. So most of our disagreements are actually the two of us against various other people as opposed to against one another.
Right. It's such a rough business.
It's very, you get punched in the face repeatedly.
You do. I mean, I mean, you've told me some crazy stories. Just sometimes when you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you've got to raise $1 million in a day or something. Like, it's just because films end up in that way where you've got a crew on hold and you've got everything ready to go, and maybe all your financing hasn't come in yet. So how do you keep yourself, kind of sturdy?
I think you get used to the problems because the problems often end up being the same. I've been doing it for 11 years, and the problems end up often being the same kind of problems of disagreeing with an agent about something, or disagreeing with a filmmaker about something, or having trouble on the cash flow front. So you start to see the same problems every time, and I think it's really important to never take it personally and to just try and break the problem down into, what are the different solutions, and also just to have a partner who's by your side helping and coming up with new ideas. And
I think it's very difficult in our sector. We make movies between $5 and $15 million, and and I set out my first store, Shingu Films, to only work with first-time writer-directors. And so I worked with Guy Ritchie, I worked with Duncan Jones. They both now only make studio pictures. And what happens is that once you've done a small independent, it's going to take a long time before that director will ever come back to you to want to do an indie. And what I feel that we filmmakers in the independent sector don't get is enough credit, really, from the studio system to bring us their projects, to say, well, look, you championed these directors who we've worked with prolifically at Warner Brothers or wherever it be, and we want to, give you the first refusal on this picture. There's no sort of like fairness in the world of filmmaking, and there are too few. The bigger point I guess I'm trying to make is that 25% of the film business is made up of women producers, and only 5% are made up of female directors. And I think one of the things that Celine and I felt when we opened up our doors to Maven Pictures was that we wanted to reverse that. We want to really look for female-driven films. We have a lot of actresses who, who are not so employable anymore in the studio system as the leading roles, because what we see are very often, George Clooney, who's now, in his 50s, but he's, his love interest is somebody who is 20 years younger than him.
She's 8 months old.
What?
She's a newborn.
A newborn. But, and so what happens to the 40-year-old actresses? Well, very often, they don't have a lot of work to do, or they have poorer choices than they used to. So that we've encouraged a lot of very big former leading actresses to come to us with their projects, with them on board as associate producers, to bring us material, to bring us their ideas. And we have quite a lot on our slate of that kind of material with those very high caliber, brilliant women.
It's quite the slate. I was just reading it yesterday, and they have so much in development, and the people you have enlisted is extraordinary. I'm going to ask one last question before we open to the audience, but how much does it help that you're both British? British birds.
She's not British.
Two British birds.
Actually, when you have an English accent in America, for some reason, people automatically think you're clever. So you get,
I know.
So you get a lot of credit. You might say the dumbest thing, and people
she can't even spell. It's so sad.
People say, "Oh, that's a really interesting point." So English accent helps.
Yes,
I spend my life saying, "Oh, Celine went to Oxford, It's sort of like, then everyone wants to talk to us.
I know. Suddenly you're both reciting Shakespeare, and someone gave you $1 million. So I'm going to open any questions from the floor. Ladies, gent. Oh, there's just one. Sorry. Oh, hello. Yes.
Question: how does mainstream media impair the work that you're trying to do in this space, in the regard that we see women, when they're given TV roles and predominantly film roles, the language that they use, there are archetypes, right? You've kind of got the blonde bimbo, and then you've got the, dark-haired bitch,
Bitch, you can say it. Yeah.
So how, when are we all do you feel like you have the partners and the people that come to the table and want to facilitate the work that you are doing to redefine the value chain of women from 15 years old or newbornness to, an 80-year-old actress? What does that evolution look like, and who would you like to see come to the table and say, hey, we really believe in Maven Pictures and we want to facilitate this process?
It's an interesting question. I think within the film industry, the screenwriting, the scripts that you get are typically written from a male standpoint, and that might be because there's more male screenwriters, or it might be because those movies are more likely to get made. But we find often the scripts that you get, the woman is the girlfriend or the best friend, and is an afterthought and is a sounding board, but isn't driving the action. And so that's from a script standpoint. And then from an industry and from a business standpoint, the foreign sales market, so how much your movie is worth internationally, is really driven by the value of the male cast much, much more than the female cast. So if you have a male actor and a female actor that you would say, they're probably as well known as each other and they have the same kind of track record, the male name will have more value and that movie is more likely to get greenlit than the equivalent with a female actress. So the industry is very, very much skewed against women. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is to go straight to the actresses we want to work with. So we're working right now with Cate Blanchett and Amy Adams and Rachel Weisz, and actresses that we really, really respect, and say, what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? And find books that they like or ideas they like and develop it and really kind of create the work for them from scratch. And what we're finding in the marketplace is actually the audience wants to see female-driven films, and every few months there's a huge female-driven movie that succeeds really, really well, and the whole industry every time is so surprised and says, wow, people like female-driven films, and then they revert back to their ways and they continue making male-driven films. So we're trying in our small way to change that, but it's a big challenge.
One question I have is how involved are you both in like the Gina Davis Institute for Gender and Media and other organizations like that are kind of really trying to balance the playing field, if at all?
I didn't quite hear the question.
What was the organization? Sorry.
It's the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media. And so it's like they're actually having a big symposium on Monday or something like that. That's about kind of leveling the playing field from a gender perspective, from both in front of the camera, behind the camera, etc.
I've read some of their reports, but I've actually never had any direct interaction with them. The two organizations that I've interacted more with is Women in Film, based out of LA, and then the New York Women in Film here.
I think it's what you make.
We'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
that's great.
Okay, so as you all said, it's a very difficult industry. So where do you find the strength to keep going when you have those failures, to still be inspired and determined and to feel like you can make a contribution?
I think it's really important to be able to laugh about it and to have someone who both is by your side, kind of you're weeping together through the difficulties, but then the next day you manage to make a joke out of it. And we had a recent incident, and we can't name names sadly, but a movie that we worked on for years and years and found an amazing director. It was a great script and found a great director and found all the money, and the movie was literally ready to go, and there was a big male producer with a very big ego who tried to push us out after we did all of that. And it was such an upsetting thing, and we basically strategized and fought it and managed to stay on the film. And then since then, we've laughed about it every day, and you just basically kind of, don't take things personally, and you find comedy in it, and you basically you allow it to drive you to want to do better work and to keep going, as opposed to letting it get you down.
But I think the quality that you need to have to produce is tenacity, and I think Celine and I are both very tenacious, and we also have a really strong work ethic. I get up every day and I really get very excited about going to work and furthering a movie and helping the actor, get onto the first rung of the ladder, or the director, or whatever it be. And the marvelous thing about movies is no two movies are similar. You're in so many different worlds. It's a very enriching life, and I have a very enriching life because I do more than just produce. I love to act, and I've just come back from Oslo, where I've been celebrating the 25 years of our Rainforest Foundation, and it's all of these things that sort of like become a total kind of like a cake with so many great ingredients. I'm very grateful for every day of my life in any case. I have so much, and hugely grateful to have found my second partner in life, who I love very much.
And what also really helps? Wine. So go and have some, and thank you, Trudie and Celine, and keep on, ladies.